I've been teaching you to survive. We are God's boy. That makes us a target. From now until the end of days, you are marked. Here's your look at new Spin Master toys. The Shapes Collection, God of War, Ragnarok, Atreus. Introducing the official Atreus 6-inch figure from the Shapes Collection, inspired by God of War Ragnarok. This premium collector's piece features Atreus in detailed archer survival garb with over 130 unique finishes, designed by Meng Wang, Daniel Salas of Head Hopper Studios, and originally painted by Dun Jin Chao. The figure showcases 33 points of articulation, enhancing his dynamic combat style. Equipped with bow, arrow, and interchangeable hands for various poses, Atreus is prepared to fight alongside Kratos. When it comes to wisdom, we are not what we know, but what we're willing to learn. What we've learned so far is that Spin Master puts out some pretty cool God of War figures, having already looked at the Shapes Collection God of War Ragnarok Kratos. Before we bring in his father, let's get the measurements going here for Atreus. The figure stands at about 5¼ inches in height, or Kratos' son stands at about 13½ centimeters tall. According to Entertainment Earth, Atreus is slated to drop in October 2024 for $29.99. Based on only those listings, he actually predates his father by 2 months, because Kratos comes out in December 2024. Not to say, though, that the figures don't already exist and that people haven't gotten their hands on them, but only going by the listings alone. Now, like in the game, though, Atreus is going to come up short when he compares along to Kratos. He only goes to about the shoulder sections of his father. Coming up short not only on size, but also accessory count. God of War's Kratos did come include with 2 variations of his shield, swappable hands, and a Leviathan axe. Atreus actually has one less, comes with 2 swappable hands, a bow, and an arrow. Before we look at the bow and the arrow, let's discuss first the fact the figure does come include with hands. If you like closed fists, then the figure does have these. Although if you want to have him holding the bow and the arrow, neither one of these will really be helpful at all, because of course he wouldn't be able to hold one of them, or even both, if you decide to swap these out. Moving those to the side, the figure does also come include, like I said, the bow and the arrow. The thing that I think is smart, first of all, is the way that Spin Master handled the bow and the arrow, in the way that you attach them. When we have looked at figures in the past, sometimes you even get a case where the bow and the arrow are attached by one piece and they're all molded in the same plastic. This time around, you're actually getting yourself a real threaded cord. As you can see, it's quite elastic. So if you're not too careful, you'll shoot the arrow clean across the room. It's already happened to me a couple of times. The thing I like at least about that is that they've put a little indentated groove, you can see right there. So you can take the arrow and you can wedge it right on there, and it's not going to go anywhere. When you're looking to actually put this into his hands, obviously, if you're looking at the hands, first of all, this hand here is a grip. This hand here is a grip, but it's specifically designated for holding the arrow. So when you're putting this into his hands, first you kind of want to just bend the elbows just a little bit. Take and deal first with the arrow, with the bow, I should say, and just get the bow in his hands, sort of like that. Then you can go ahead and take yourself the arrow, attach that arrow into the groove we've already had a look at. Sometimes, though, you may find the bow is actually popping out of his hands. It's just a case of popping it back into his hands. Then you can go ahead and take the end of the arrow, the feather end of it, and just have it sort of pinched in between his fingers, sort of like that. And he holds it fine and good, and I know what you're already thinking, well, he's not going to be able to fire much of anything because, of course, the cord is pulled way back there. So what you can also do then, first of all, you may want to even retrieve the arrow. And when you retrieve the arrow, the best thing I would probably advise as well, even though this isn't really the correct way, I found it was easier, because I've actually done this where he's holding at the arrow, the bow and the arrow the correct way, and it ends up shooting again the arrow across the room. If you take the cord and you pull it back right to where his hand attaches by the wrist, now he's holding it securely, and I know that's not really the correct way. Then take the arrow, fit that into the groove, just like that. And everything is going to be pulling against you. Then take the end of the arrow and sort of just fit it into his hands. Now, again, this is cheating a little bit because, truth be told, it's not really him actually holding and pulling back the cord, but at least he's holding it. Now, I don't know how long you're going to be able to do it like this, but at least one thing is if it hooks around his wrist like this, it gives sort of the suggested idea that he's pulling back the cord. You could really have the cord where I've had it fed underneath his fingers and he's still holding the arrow. The thing unfortunately about that, though, is it pulls it pretty tight, and then again, I have shot the arrow across the room. So it's quite a believable bow and arrow. This is probably just the easiest way to pull that off. Removing the bow and the arrow for right now. We're going to put it off to the side. We're going to come back, though, to that in final looks. Getting the closer look, though, at Atreus' head. I think, like Kratos, they've done a really nice job of painting this. I don't know, over at least 100 layers of different paint. It's one of the selling points that they've made when it comes to these figures. And you can definitely see there's a lot of paint that's been had here. Now, obviously, Atreus, if you look at it, it's just the head alone. It's well painted. I mean, for the finer features of, like, his eyes, for example, I don't see any paint bleeding. I don't see any paint where it's left the eye completely and found its way to the side of his face. No, the head sculpt is painted really well. The stubble that he also has on his head, you can see, is more of a lighter color. And they've even nicely done this where they've transitioned the color. If I get my finger out of the way, they've transitioned the color so it gets a little lighter as it gets closer to his face. Really, those attentions to detail are well appreciated. When it comes to his body, of course, he now has his yellow, I guess it would be a yellow tunic. And then, of course, he's got himself the pelt skirting that goes down below that as well. This is softer plastic, very similar to Kratos. Nice colors, those of the blue. You've got, again, like the additional markings that he has on his arms. This arm obviously has the sleeve. This arm doesn't. So because of that, this arm is going to be a little bit thicker versus this one. But they hinge the exact same way. We'll talk more about the articulation in a second. Lots of good color that they've made here for the skirting. The top being obviously brown with some additional accents there of red. You got the blue underneath there, and all the colors fairly accurate from what I remember of the game. He even has himself a quiver on the back that stores the extra arrows. There's no extra space to store the arrow that you don't currently use right now in his hands, nor is there a way to remove any additional arrows. These are all permanently attached, very similar to the dagger that Kratos has on the side of his pelt. So you can't take those off. But just like the fact that they included this could be easily one thing that they could have left off. The arrows themselves, as you can see, are a little more of a softer plastic. Same can as well be said for the skirting that he has too, a very soft plastic. All in all, it's a well-sculpted figure. I did have one issue, though, when it came to really bending his legs. I don't know why. I didn't have as many issues when it came to Kratos, and yet Atreus, something about his knees, they just seem like they get kind of hung up really, really tight. Speaking of the articulation on the characters, though, going back to Kratos' son, the head's going to rotate on the ball joints. So Atreus' head rotates all the way around. The head looks down, looks up. You can also move it back and forth as well. Upper torso is going to be on a ball joint similar to his dad. You can take as well the arm and rotate all the way around. Now, even though he does have the fur pelt for the shoulder on one side, short of maybe just finding whereabouts that joint is, which is just right over here. That's about the only problem I've ever had with this. Rotating the arm isn't so much the issue. It's, though, realizing there's the joint right there. You want to make sure that you bring it back home where it belongs. Sometimes you have to kind of twist it around manually and then just bring the arm down. It's the only real problem I've had. I haven't had it on this issue at all because obviously it's so much easier to kind of see what's going on in the clearing. This arm rotates all the way around. He does have a bicep swivel. He does have only a single hinge in his elbow. And even though, like, obviously this is a larger hinge than this one here, I didn't have as much of a worry because I was kind of thinking, again, this guy, the packaging, that's a pretty small arm and that's a pretty small joint. And I thought that bending is something would snap. But no, the joints are done well. I mean, it's a little more of a softer plastic. I feel like, if anything, Atreus might have a softer plastic than maybe Kratos had. But like, no issues at all. Like, the arms rotate fine. If anything, as already mentioned, you just want to kind of be careful. Like, if you move his arm around, you may lose sight of where that joint should be. You just don't want to force it down if the joint's way up here. As for, again, we've already looked at the torso, the legs split out. Because, again, the way they've layered these, there's a split right up the middle. And, of course, he has the skirt over top of that. So he does have the means to split his legs pretty far like this. You can take the legs, move forward. You can move them back. Atreus also has a swivel at the top of the thigh, a double hinge on the knee, which, again, is a little on the tighter side, but I guess it would be a better thing to have this tight than really overly loose. Ankle pivot back and forth. Ankle rocker as well. Similar as well to his father, Atreus does have pegals on bombs of his feet. Even though the figures don't come included with display stands, would be really nice if they could have included display stands, because, again, like, if they wanted to mark these all having like sort of the same thing, the shapes collection, I think it would be kind of fun if the line as a whole had consistent display stands that had the shapes collection featured on the front. Now, obviously, here's what he looks like with his dad. Size-wise, I think, again, they fit in really well with one another. I'm really impressed with how much paint application Spin Master afforded both these figures. I was quite impressed with what we got with Kratos, and I'm equally impressed with what we get with his son, Atreus. Joined in the game, now joined in final looks, I wanted to bring back Kratos and have him displayed along with his son, Atreus, as the way they will be displayed on my shelf shortly after this review has wrapped up. Now, the thing about this, though, I've got both characters with a pretty wide stance. You may find that both of them have a bit of stability issues the wider the stance that you put them in, especially Atreus. Atreus having such smaller feet like this, I did have to kind of cheat a little bit, and I'm using a display stand from another figure company. At least they do have universally sized peg holes in the bottoms of both of their boots, so if you wanted to use a stand, you could. Ideally, though, it would have been great if Spin Master could have used their own display stands with this figure line, either calling them and marking them with God of War Ragnarok specifically for Kratos or Atreus, or just painting a big brush broad stroke across the whole entire line and releasing display stands that had the Shape Collection on top of them. Because after all, it isn't just God of War that we'll be looking at with the Shapes Collection lineup. Now, when it comes to both these characters, I've got them with both wielding weapons. Kratos does have the benefit of having 3 weapons, if you count considering the fact he does have the folded up shield and an open shield. Atreus only really has at his disposal the bow and the arrow. The bow and the arrow, if anything could be criticized, is the fact that it's too effective of a bow and arrow with the string being pulled taut like this. If you have it attached right around the arrow, there's been about 5 times now I've had to go to retrieve an arrow. The easiest way, and probably the cheapest way, is hook the line around the wrist area. Where the hand attaches onto the forearm for Atreus, just sort of tuck the cording into that, and it does a good enough job of looking like he's pulling back the cord when he really isn't. Again, both of these figures are slated to release between October and December. Atreus is October, Kratos is December. Even though I know a lot of people are still getting their hands on these right now. Entertainment Earth currently has pre-orders. I can certainly put the links down below in the video description if you guys are interested. And because the prices have started to skyrocket on some of these, more Kratos than Atreus, probably the best way to get them is currently through Entertainment Earth. Big thank you once again to the folks, though, at Spin Master Toys that did provide the sample of the brand new Shapes Collection, God of War Ragnarok Atreus. And we had the chance to have a look in this review. What do you guys think of this line? Let me know down below in the comments section. Are you also big fans of God of War? For your video question for today, what's your favorite God of War game? Gotta go with still God of War 2. That's my all-time favorite. But what's yours? Let me know down below in the comments section. If in the meantime you guys did enjoy this video, do it a solid, throw it a like. You guys want to stick around for more so? I went for a pause. I hope so. I hope so. We may be wrapping up things right now for God of War Ragnarok, but we will also be looking at some more Shapes Collection, courtesy of the folks over at Spin Master. So hit the subscribe, turn on that bell, do all those things. But the most important thing is that you're coming back here on a regular basis. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.